Hello friends, welcome back. In our previous video we have covered React 19 overview, and we have created a complete employee management app project, okay, with the help of React and Next.js. So we understood the project architectures, and we have created some couple of components and API layers, okay. So in this video we are going to understand what is a server components and a client components. Okay, so before going to definition part, so we have seen in Next.js application, right? If you have ever worked with Next.js, or have you seen these things like use client? So what this use client is saying, right? Is use client is saying like it's a client component, okay? So in Next.js, if you won't mention a use client, right? By default, it treats it as a server component. Okay, and if you want to make this component behave as a client component, then definitely you need to write use client. Okay, so this is okay, but what is the actual difference between the server component and client component then? Okay, so server component and client component difference comes by the way where they are rendering. Okay, server components rendered on the server. Okay, basically for the JavaScript, the server used to be a Node.js server. Okay, and the client components rendered on the client, which is nothing but a browser. Okay, so when server components render, right, they run on the server, and the zero JavaScript return to the sent to the browser. So to the client, right, they will not send any JavaScript. What they will send instead, an HTML. Okay, we will see this with the live example. And in the case of client component, as client components runs on the browser, so we use client component where we need an interactive UI. Okay, means we should have something like we need to use a useEffect or useState, or need event handlers like a click events, on change event. So wherever we need the interactivity in a UI, right, we will use a client component. And in some cases where we just need to fetch data or calling the APIs, and the component we need a static data, right, in those cases we will use a server components. Okay, so coming to the example, so in our last project previous video, what we have did is, so this is our initial page. Okay, page.tsx initial load this renders, right? So we have this home component. So if you see here, we did not mention any use client, correct? So if we did not mention, means it's a server component. Because it's a server component, then how it works in browser. Let me go to our application, and what I'm doing is I'm just opening the debugger here, and I am reloading this. Okay, so make sure I'm just putting the document here, and let me add this too. Okay, now let me reload the application. So if you see here, whenever this localhost renders, right, whenever this hits the API 3000, so what preview I got it as a HTML. Okay, I got preview HTML, which is nothing but what you can see here. Okay, employee management and form, and this employee cards, right? So this HTML is returned to me from the backend call. Okay, when I did the API or when I load the default one, what it do is, as I did not mention it is a client component in page.tsx file, it considered it as a server, and server returned me the complete HTML. Okay, so there is no JavaScript returned to me. Got it? Similarly, like if we have these two components, employee card, so you observed, right, for this employee card, again it is a server component because I did not mention use client at the top. But for the employee form, I have mentioned use client. Okay, so the form part in our application I used as a client component, and the below part, okay, here I'm just showing the static data, right? I'm not doing any logic part here. So that's why, just for an example, I kept it as a server component. Okay, now because this is a server component, right? So how it behaves differently. Okay, let's see with proper example. So in case of employee form, we have did we have this form, right? In that form we have some events, right? On submit methods are getting called, and we are using the use state here, right, to show some message or the status is submitting. So here we are doing some browser interaction, okay, or you need to do some click events. So as we are doing some interactive UI here, that's why we return it into use client, okay. And other hand, on employee card there is nothing, just we are getting the employee data and just we are displaying. This is kind of a static one, okay. Nothing else we have done here so far. There is no use state, no on click handler, so that's why this is working correctly as a server component. Let's say if you need to convert this page.tsx file to the client component, okay. If you do so, right, what will happen? This call, currently you did not able to see this get employee call here because it happens at the backend. It happened at the server, okay. If you see the network, you won't see any call happen for employee because it happened at the node server side. Basically nothing, this service call did not happen at the UI side. If you want to do it as a client component, what you need to do, you need to use here as a use client, okay. Once you do this one, it will start behaving as a client component. So currently it will give errors, we will fix it, but let me try to just reload it, okay. So what happens, you see, right, too many employees call now because it is trying to hit the API now, okay, to get the employee data. So we are getting this 200 error, but it is keep doing the calls. I'll tell you how to fix all those things at but just for your understanding, once you converted it from a server component to client component, these things start compiling in the browser. It start running into the browser instead of server. That's why you start getting this call. Let's fix it. So in order to make it as a client component, we should not use these employees directly in this way. We need to use instead use effects and all, right. So let's say I'm just commenting out this code and just making it with the help of use state. So let me just import all this missing import. So what I'm doing is, whenever the service call it happens, I'm just calling this get employees, and once success, I'm setting the data to this state, okay. And then this employees we are using it, okay. And another thing is we should not use this async for the client components, but still let me first try to render to show the error. So when I'm trying to do this one, you can see now the service calls are not happening multiple times, and in this case backend is returning me as a JSON, and that JSON client side I'm rendering and doing the manipulation here, okay. So but we are getting this error here which is saying only server components can be async at the moment. We cannot make client component async. So that's why what we need to do, we simply need to remove this async here from our component, okay. Now let me re-render it. So you can see it worked very fine, right? So when we reloaded it, the employee service call happened and it given me the JSON data, and this component working now as a completely properly as a client component, okay. We use the use client using the state, because another thing I explained here is, right, if we need to use like use state or use effects, we should be using definitely a client component. These all features are not supported by the server side components, okay. Now let's see the differences between these two, okay. So we already observed what are server components. It renders on the server. You cannot see the JavaScript code. It returns as the HTML, okay. Every manipulations will be happening at the server side. And coming to client component, if we need interactive UI, right, we need to use a use effect or state and event handlers, then we should go with the client components, Okay, so we no need to add any special directive to make the component behave as server component. By default, these are server components. If you did not mention use client, then it will be a server component by default in Next.js. But if you need to make some component like to behave as a client component, then you need to add this attribute at the top, which is a use client. Okay, then where it runs on the server, it runs on the browser client component. And coming to rendering, it is server side rendering, HTML sent to client. We already seen with an example. In this one, everything happened at the client side itself. Then data fetching, right? So when we use server components, right, if we need to directly interact with the DBs or APIs, right, we no need to do any extra layer. Directly we can call DBs and get the data from the API layer. But in this case, we need to use via the API and route handlers. Okay, we need to use the fetch methods and all. And state and effects, right? So we cannot use state, use effect, and other client side hooks. These hooks are not supported on server, but if we need a client side component, we can use them. Coming to event handler, the same thing. We cannot have on click, on change events. We can have in client component instead. Bundle size, so this is important. What is the advantage of creating a components at the server side, right? Have you have seen, right, it will be very limited JavaScript code, right? From the if it this code move to server, let's say most of the code components move to server, right, the bundle size in the front end will be very smaller. So final bundle size, because those code moved to server and it is running very fastly there, this UI code got rendered. So let's say we are calling a API which is giving a list of 1000 records, and on 1000 records we are doing some filtering, and simply what we need to do, we need to show the filtered data in a component. We can write that one into the server component, let's say. So directly we are getting the HTML of that. We no need to have those logics in the client side. Okay, so bundle size will be reduced in case of server components, and it is more secure. You cannot see even the code, right? In the initial case when we did a employee service employee call in this previous example, we just see the HTML. We did not even see how employee call happened. But once we can convert it into a client component, then we are able to see this API call. Okay, get employees. So that's why it is more secure as well. Okay, and yeah, where we use is like when we need a static contents, or some dashboard blocks, reports cases. And when we need an interactive UI for forms, buttons, model, definitely we need to use a client components. And can use client components in a server components. Yeah, you can use a client components, but the vice versa will not work. Okay, yeah, in next video we will start looking into our next item, which will be actions. Okay, so we'll continue with these examples and integrate the actions part. Thank you for watching.